All right. Hello, everyone. This is Oscar Peña from CASAS Tech Support. Welcome to the TE Basics training on today, Friday, December 11th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. As you know, this training will cover the basics for TE. We'll be using the Rolling Hills database, and I will take you through some, training rules before we get started. I would ask you, if you haven't done so, to please put yourself on mute if you haven't been placed already. And if you do have any questions, I would ask you please put those questions in the chat room. We will have Janice Vera soon join us, and she's going to go ahead and assist us with any questions. So for the moment, I don't know if Janice is here. Janice, if you're here, please go ahead and introduce yourself. I take that as a no, she's not here. She just sent me an email. That she's running a little bit late because she is in other meetings right now. But I'll try to address any questions as much as possible as I'm, going through the training. So before we get started, the training packet is available at the CASAS website. This is what we're going to be following as close as possible. So where exactly that is, if we go to the CASAS website, so let me take you to the CASAS website over here. As you know, that is www.casas.org. We're going to go ahead and click on Training and Support on the top menu. We're going to click on TOPSpro eTest Online, eTest Online Help on the side menu. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat room right now. Yes. And we're going to scroll down to TOPSpro Enterprise Basics, and we're going to be following this document, TOPSpro Enterprise Basics Quick Start. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my tab over here. This is my link. I'm going to copy this and put this in the chat box, okay? So go ahead and click on that, and you can go ahead and follow this. You don't have to follow it as we're going in the training. If you don't want to, you can go ahead and, look at this, afterwards. Do you know that the training is, I believe it's 40 pages or so. I have it printed out. Yeah, it's about 40 pages. So heads up, if you are trying to print this out, it's a little bit long, all right? But we're just going to go ahead and cover the basics of it. All right, so that's that. In addition to that, if you have any further questions, say, because of time and your questions don't get answered, please know that we are available at tech support. Our email is techsupport@casas.org, and our phone number is 1-800-255-1036, option 2. Once again, our email is techsupport@casas.org, and our general phone number is 1-800-255-1036, option 2. We are open from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. That is Pacific time, and that is Monday through Friday. All right? So having said that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Everybody good? Everybody can hear me just fine? Thank you. Thank you, Gail. All right, perfect. Thank you, Anna. Perfect. Thank you, Nicole. All right, so in order to do this training, we're going to be using our simulation database. CASAS has a simulation database available for any user, not just me for the training, but you as a user can access this training database anytime, 24/7. So where do you find that? You would have to first install TE. Where do you install TE? You can install TE from the eTest website. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my eTest website tab over here. This particular, page happens to be for Rolling Hills, but if you are to go to the California website, if you are to go to the Washington, server, they all look the same. You might not know, but CASAS has different servers. The purpose for those servers is to alleviate the traffic from that particular service so that not everybody is using one same server. So California has its own, Washington has its own, Miami has its own, and everybody else who does not have an assigned server, we call it global. So everybody else goes to the global. Regardless of what server you go to, the page will look exactly the same. Obviously, the address on the top, as you can see over here, will be different. This address, this particular address, is for our simulation database. So this is what we use for training. So let me go ahead and copy this, and I will put this under the chat box just for reference, all right? And this is our simulation database. All right. Give me 1 second. Simulation database. All right, very good. So if you need to install TE, you're going to click on this button that is on the upper left-hand corner that says Install TE Client. As you might know, you have two applications. One is TE TOPSpro Enterprise, and the other one is eTest Online. We are currently at the page for eTest, but here you can also install TE TOPSpro Enterprise. The difference between those two applications is TE is for your data administration. For example, if you want to create a user account, if you for all your users, to give access to your users, if you want to submit your quarterly reports, or perhaps some instructional reports for your teachers, or look at your database, clean up your database, enter hours and so forth. All that is done through TE. That's your data management application. eTest, on the other hand, is for testing. This is where you do your testing, remotely or on site. It will be under eTest. All right. So in order for us to install TE, TE gets installed in a particular computer, and it has to be on a Windows PC. That's the only platform that TE is available under. eTest, on the other hand, for the purpose of testing, you can do that under a Windows PC, under an iPad, and Chromebooks. Those are the three platforms that are compatible. One can use a Apple computer, but the computer has to be turned into a PC through, Boot Camp or Parallel. Those are two softwares that are used to convert that Mac to a PC. Yes. So I have a question for Sylvia. It says, for the simulation database, do we use our login information? That's a good question. So this is a simulation database. So this has nothing to do with your own data. So from the credentials to the data itself. So you're welcome to just look at my screen, or you're welcome to follow if you need to. It might be a little problematic trying to follow because you're going to be split between doing the directions and following the next step. So it's up to you, but you're welcome to just look at the at my presentation, and there's always going to be a recording, so you can always follow with the documentation if you need to do it afterwards. That probably will be the recommendation, but it's all up to you. My pleasure, Sylvia. All right, so once we install TE, you should be getting a login window just like this. This is TE. Notice that on the upper drop menu, I have all those servers that are available. I'm going to use the rolling hills. Notice that you have California, you have Global, you have Washington, as I said prior. So we're going to be using the rolling hills. The credentials we're going to be using for those who would like to follow, again, not necessary, but if you would like to follow, those are under page 3 if you are following the documentation. So on page 3, you will see on the bottom of page 3 the credentials that we're going to be using. So 4908 is the fictitious ID that has been set for Rolling Hills. The name of our site is Rolling Hills. Oh, I see Janice just came in. Hi, Janice. Janice, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, no, Oscar, you're doing a good job. You're on a roll. I'm Janice Farrow. I'm a program and technology specialist based in Sacramento. Go for it, Oscar. I'm enjoying the presentation very much.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you. And Janice is going to help us with Nicole. I appreciate it. Thank you beforehand. With any questions that I don't get to answer in the chat room. Okay. Thank you. All right. So Going back, the agency that has been set, the ID that has been set for Rolling Hills is 4908. The user we're going to be using is administrator. Basically, administrator has the most access in TE. We want to do that for the purpose of training. The particular user account I am using is administrator0@rhas.org. That stands for Rolling Hills Adult School. Notice that under administrator, I have the numeric character 0. You can enter 0 through 50. The purpose for that, once again, is to alleviate the amount of traffic, but if two users happen to be logged in under the same username or account, no worries. The system is very well capable of handling, multiple users. In a scenario of a training, it's recommended for one to assign, users IDs 1 through 50 or so forth. All right. And then the password.
Oscar, it's Janice. Are you actually going through the login steps right now? What I'm seeing is the e-tests screen. Are you going to bring up the TE login screen in a minute?
Thank you for giving that heads up. Yes, I was there. I happened to choose the wrong screen that I was sharing. I apologize for that. Thank you for that heads up. Is this good now? Is everyone seeing my login screen now?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right. So now that we have the screen, the login screen on screen, we're going to go ahead and quickly go back and say we are going to be using the Rolling Hills Simulation Database under server, under state agency side. Our fictitious ID will be 4908. Our user name will be administrator 0 in my case at rhas.org. You can use administrator 1 through 50 at rhas.org if you need to. And password will be admin. That is ADMIN, admin. All right. And it's all lowercase, admin. Then once we have all our credentials, we're going to go ahead and click connect. You'll see the application connecting to the simulation database. The very first thing we're going to see will be your startup page. Your startup page is a way for CASAS to connect with you and provide information about currently, news and most requested, tasks and questions and, documents that usually users call and ask for. So here you have how-tos, you have your shortcuts, you have reports, and any announcement that needs to be made, it will be done through announcements. Here you have the state level, anything that has to do from CASAS, at the agency and site. You can also add this for yourself. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close this page, and we'll talk a little more about startup page once we get to the corresponding area. All right, so I went ahead and closed my startup page, and now I have the application TE. We're gonna go ahead and start from the upper left by hovering. Notice I'm just hovering. I'm not clicking. Just hovering on top of the TE icon. Many times when users call to tech support, the first question tech support would ask is, what is your agency ID? That is your agency number. If you do not remember, don't feel like you have to log out in order to get that ID. All you need to do is just hover on top of that TE icon, if you have TE open, and you'll see that the system will go ahead and show you what server you're connected, what agency you are connected to, and the user account that you are using to connect. All right. Now, if we click on this TE icon, you have the following options: lock, to lock the application; disconnect. Say, for example, you're going to go ahead and walk away from your desk. Disconnect probably will be a good option, because disconnecting will take me back to the login window. So all I need to do is just enter my password, and I can log back in. Change password, as it says, it's to change your password if you need to. At times you might have to have your data manager reset your password. Just keep that in mind. In the other associates accounts, we're gonna go ahead and skip that because that's more of an advanced feature. You might hear me saying this, for certain options because, again, we are covering only the basics, all right? Then we have options. So let's go ahead and click on options. Here under options, you have your general settings. Say, for example, here, under general page, you have how much time you want your application to be, to time out. So meaning if your application is idle for 30 minutes, then the system's gonna go ahead and log out for safety, reasons. If you want to extend that time, it's just a matter of increasing this time from here, all right? So going to the next tabs on start. So here, another, thing to point out, notice that we have auto open start page. That's the page that we look for the announcements. If you want that page to open each and every time you log into TE so that you can keep up with the latest, announcements, you can go ahead and leave this checked. If you don't want to, it's just a matter of unchecking it, all right? Then you have warn me when WTUs equals to 500. What are WTUs? WTUs are used for eTest, and that stands for Webtest Units. Webtest Units is every time a student tests, a unit is deducted. So it is important for the agency to have a certain amount of WTUs to work and test as you normally will do. Will the system stop you from testing if you hit 0? No. We will not do that, but you will be getting eventually, if you do not purchase additional WTUs, you will be getting a friendly call from CASA saying, hey, you need to purchase WTUs because you are in the negative now. So in order for you not to get to that 0, you can go ahead and, enter a specific amount. If you happen to be a smaller agency, you can, reduce that amount. I think the least you can enter is, or at least the least you can set is 100. I believe that is the least. And, but if you're a larger agency, on the other hand, 500 will be the recommended, amount to set over here. So we're going to be moving forward to the next edit view. So for those names under reports, under listers, you have multiple options. You have unchanged, you have all uppercases or all proper, first letter of the name being capitalized. So again, the default option will be unchanged, but you can change it to anything else. It also is set by default to remember your last schema. So basically whatever settings you set last, the system will remember. So it's always good to keep that in mind in case you're expecting, anything different. Just remember you need to reset your lister. And we'll get to that when, as we get to listers. That will be one of the next, areas. All right, so then you see listers over here. Just to mention, listers is basically, TE has two ways of showing the data. One is listers and the other one is reports. Listers, to give you a visual, is more like a worksheet, like a spreadsheet from Excel, where you have columns and rows and all your data is displayed right there. They're very easy to filter, to sort, to add columns, to eliminate, part of your search and so forth. So that's just like your Excel worksheet. That's basically listers. Reports, on the other hand, and you see these are all the settings for your listers. Reports, on the other hand, as the name suggests, is more of a visually easier to read type of display of data. So it can include graphics, and it's with color and everything, more visually pleasing for a meeting that you need to pass, over, and people can go ahead and read it, and so forth. So some reports do have the capability of take you to a lister, and we call that a drill down feature. And we'll get to there, once we do reports. All right. Then you have your settings for imports. You can import from any third-party, application as long as you follow a certain guide of, a format that is expected by TE. You can import demographics. You can import, attendance, tests, entries, updates, and so forth. There is a requirement, as I said. There is a process of being validated to import. And, and that is something that we can definitely go over if you guys need to. Just as we import, we can go ahead and export as well. As you can see, the only option here for export will be that the identifier is your student ID. Basically, that's your key field. Every student must have a student ID, and that should be a unique number. All right. So we're going to go ahead and close this window now, and we're going to move to the menu. We're going to start with view. So view, notice you have your start page back again. Say, for example, you close that startup page, and then you, were notified that, hey, CASAS is going to be closed for, the holidays. So, eventually CASAS is going to go ahead and put that notice. So you can just go ahead and click on startup page, and, we should have something over here. Obviously, but you can also visit the CASAS website for any, hours of operation, in holidays, dates. All right. And going back to view, we're going to go ahead and skip dashboard. Then you have small, normal, medium, and large. So basically, this is to enlarge or reduce the size of your font. See what happens when I click large. My, titles, my, menus get larger. Now, keep in mind that when you have a smaller screen, especially if you switch everything to large, there'll be less space for you to see. So at times when that happens, especially under a report or a list or two, you would get a more button on the upper right. What is a more button? A more button is basically anything that doesn't fit within the menu will go under more. It's just another space for you to click and find, different options, different features. And we'll get to that as as we get to the reports and listers. All right. So that was view. Obviously, we're going to go ahead and switch it back to normal so we can get a little more space on our screen. Next, we have organization. So before we click on organization, let me explain the difference between organization and records. Organization basically refers to the organization itself, the agency. All right. Records, on the other hand, refers to the student. So for example, if we are looking for a class, we will find that under organization. If we are looking for a demographic record, we will find that under records. All right. So just to give you guys a distinction between those two. So let's look into it a little more in detail. So we're going to click on the menu for organization, and we're going to click under agencies, organization and agencies. Now, this right here is what we refer to a lister. Notice that the format for a lister, which you're going to see it repeated, across the different sections, is that you have the columns and you have the rows. Obviously, in this case, we only have one agency, and that is our Rolling Hills agency. So every agency has only one agency. So you are only expecting to see one record here. But the format is columns and rows, and you have buttons on the top, which we're going to go ahead and, look into it on the next section. And here is the more button. Remember, we were talking about more button. So if I click over here, the system didn't have any more space to, include my child listers. So it's going to go ahead and include that under more. So if I was looking for the button child lister and I couldn't find it, I always need to keep in mind that I need to click on the more button and check there to see if the system went ahead and put that button there. All right. We're going to go ahead and double click on this record, my agency record. All right. So this right here is my agency information. Now, notice the format that TE uses, because you're going to see this repeating regardless whether we are under the agency or we have opened the student record or we have opened a test record. It will be the same format. And by format, I mean you have a main page over here with the particular record information. In this case, we are under agency. So here's your agency information. For this particular record, we have the agency ID, your license, your funding sources, the state, all the information that pertains to your agency. We also have the current, year that has been set up and so forth. On the upper left-hand corner, on the other hand, we have your Navigator. So under Navigator, because we are we have looked we have opened the record for agency. The corresponding information for agency will be sites, test administrations, program year, users, access groups, and so forth. We have the capability of accessing these sites through here by clicking, or we can go back to organization and find sites here too. So those are the two. All right. So we can go ahead and set those up from either way. So we're going to go ahead and click on sites. All right. So without visually counting at this site, can anybody tell me where will we find how many sites are displayed? All right, let me quickly give you an answer right here. So right next to the refresh button, we have the count. So here it says 1 out of 8. So 8 is my total sites. All right, so obviously this lister happens to be small, so we can visually count it if we needed to, but these especially come in handy when you're counting, you're filtering or sorting or opening hundreds and hundreds of records. So to get that count, you just look at this count next to the refresh button. All right. So if we want to click on the north side campus, that is your 01 site, all I need to do is just double click on this and notice what TE is doing. Do you see how tabs are being opened for each of the steps, each of the clicks I am making? So now there is a way for me to go back to my previous step and my previous step. All right, so we're going to go back to North Campus, and now my Navigator, for North Campus is much smaller because it only pretends to a site level information. What is under site? Well, you have your class definitions, your class instances, registered students, students in program year, and so forth. So as you go through each section, the list gets narrow because it becomes more focused. All right. Just a quick, information about classes. In order to create a class, and we'll go over in details, next, you have a definition and you have a class instance. Definition, as the name says, is nothing but just the name of the class. Instance, on the other hand, contains all the settings for that class. What instructional program that class is, when it starts, when it ends, what is your focus area, if this is a NEL civics class, if this is a distance learning class, or it's an instructional, meaning being held in the classroom in person, how many days this class meet, what are the hours expected for this class, and so forth. So instance on one side carries the details of the class. Definition is basically just the name of the class in the ID. Those are the two fields. All right, so if we have many tabs open, you can close each tab one by one, or you can go ahead and click on the pages and close pages. So again, I click on this little tab on my upper right corner and click on pages or close all pages. All right, and that closes all my pages. Of course, if you had something that was pending and needed to be saved, the system will go ahead and remind you, would you like to save this before closing? And you can go ahead and decide that. All right. So going back to the organization menu here. So we visit classes. Now we're going to go and visit sites. We're going to go ahead and do visit to classes, definitions, and instances. All right. So we're going to go ahead and click on class definitions. All right. So as I said, class definitions has the description of the class, which is the name, and the ID. That's all you're expecting to see. Notice that there's no date reference over here because the definition itself is, although it's connected to the instance, it only carries the ID and the name. So we're going to go ahead and click on just one class over here. And you're going to see that, again, look at this, how TE uses the same format, where you have the main information for the record we're opening. In this case, it's class definition. And here you have under your Navigator, the site information for this record, for my class definition. All right, so for class definition, we have instances. And it's loading. There you go. So under instances, notice this is what I'm saying, that the instance carry the details of that class. And for this particular class, we have activity since 2015-16 year. And then it has been, repeated all the way until now. Here's your starting date. Here's your ending date. Here's your instructional program. In addition to that, you have, focus area, which again, this is if you are doing EO Civics for those, California agencies who do EO Civics. All right. Then we also have under the Navigator class enrollment. So those are the students that are enrolled to the class. So we have for this particular year, the system is going to always refer to the current year unless you specify. So for this particular year, we have a total of 43. Notice I'm basing on the count over here. So you have a total of 43 records. There are two types of counts in a lister. You have your, duplicated count and your unduplicated count. It all depends what section you're visiting. For example, under class enrollment, there's only one enrollment per student per class. So that will be a unduplicated, lister. Whereas if you are, doing class record, which basically is attendance, it includes attendance, then you're looking at a duplicated account. So you're expecting to see the number being much, much bigger because there's multiple records for that one same student, depending on how the student is attending and how often this class is being held. So these under class records, you have, the attendance records. And of course, you have teachers. So if there is a teacher, assigned to this class, there's where you can see it. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go back and close this time by clicking on the tab. We're going to go ahead and click definition and close that. We already visit a class instance, so we're just going to go ahead and skip that section. All right, so because this is basics, we're going to stay through the basic itself. But just to give you a quick, description of what we see below, you have users, which these are the users, under the agency. So this is where you create new users and when you give access. If you need to modify the access group, which is the set of rights that is given to a group of users, you go ahead and do it from here. Personals will be, teachers and so forth. Then you have your test administration, which is basically your WTUs, forms, which are your testing forms and so forth. Testing sessions for those of you who are using e-test. Those are your testing sessions displayed right there, as well as your stations and so forth. All right, so we're going to move to records now. Again, remember, records pretend to the student, organization pretends to the agency itself. So we're going to click on records, and we're going to start with records, students, demographics. Records, students, demographics. So this is where we're going to explore a little bit more about your listers, because this gives us the potential data-wise to navigate to different places. All right, so looking at this lister, which, again, is more like your Excel spreadsheet, you have the columns and the rows. In addition to that, notice that next to the title of each column, you have an icon that either looks like an arrow pointing up and down or a triangle. All right, this is basically your sort button. So say, for example, I want to go ahead and sort my data by name. So I click on this icon under the column name. Notice what happened to student ID now. It lost its triangle. What the triangle means is that is your set sorting. All right, so as of right now, I removed the default sorting, which was by student ID, and I set it alphabetically by student name. I can go ahead and, switch it to birthday, switch it to gender if I want to. Now, let's say, Oscar, what if I have different levels of sorting? Yes, you can do that. Let's say your first level of sorting is going to be by name. Your second level of sorting is going to be by birthday. I can press and hold my control key and click on that arrow for birthday. Notice what happens. The system now gives me a triangle 1 and a triangle 2. That means that my lister is first sorted by alphabetical, names, and secondly by the birthday. notice that the arrow is pointing up. The triangle is pointing up. I can always, press and hold, and that changes the sorting from ascending to descending. If I'm alphabetically, it will be A through C or Z through A. If I am looking at the birthday, will be, from oldest to latest. All right. Same thing with gender, from one to the other. So you can, do as many sortings as you need to. Obviously, if you do too many, it just defeats the purpose of sorting. All right. In addition to that, notice that there is some space left over here. We can right-click on this title bar. We call this the title bar. And when you right-click on this title bar, you notice that you get an additional menu of items for this particular lister. For demographics, we have show address, show age, show cell number, show email, and so forth. Some agencies prefer to have the name separated because you rather filter by last name. So let's do this quick, practice here. So I'm gonna go ahead and show last name. Notice this is just my last name. So over here, I can go ahead and grab this column and put it right next to name, just so that I can visually associate the two records. Notice I have this record over here with the last name matching right here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring first name independently as well. So I'm gonna right click. By the way, I'm right clicking at the empty space, but really you can right click anywhere you want to, and the system will go ahead and put that column where you right click. So I'm gonna go ahead and right click and bring first name. All right, so now the good thing of this is that now I have my first name and last name separated, as opposed to the column that was set by default, which it includes both. I can't really filter by first name or last name because it's one same record. Now I can go ahead and use my sorting, whether I want to sort specifically by last name or first name, whether I want to sort alphabetically, A through Z or Z through A by one or the other. All right. So there is, another way to do so. Obviously, if this is the case and this is how you want to have your lister, you don't need this column anymore. You can right click on this column and choose the top option, which is hide full name. So this gets rid of my column, and now this report, it's easier to read, and it matches the settings for my third-party attendance system. All right. Let's say you wanted to export this. There's always that export button. We're gonna go ahead and visit those buttons soon once we finish with this. But all this data is, you can go ahead and export it, and it would include all the columns that you assign. In addition to that, you can set a schema. What is a schema? Let's say you like this setting, but you know that if you close this lister, it's gonna go ahead and open back with the default settings. So you wanna go ahead and save the schema, and you can do so by setting your schema. Notice that you don't have any schema button here, but you do have the more button. So I have a question by Dr. Karen. It says, how do we unhide a column if we need to? Good. So basically, it's just a matter to right click once again and bring that column. Notice that I remove that column of, show last name, first name. I can go ahead and click on it again, and it brings it back again. So there's no lost data here. It just sets it in, in the background, or puts it back again in the foreground. So I can always, right click again and hide it. All right. So right click and bring it up, right click and hide it. All right. My pleasure. All right. So going forward, so notice under, since we're talking about those, titles here, right with the title in your sort button, you have this little icon that looks like a funnel. This is your add filter. There's multiple ways of filtering in TE. This is just one. All right. So let's say, for example, I want to go ahead and filter by gender. So if I click on this, I have the following options: not applicable, male, female, and non-binary. So I can go ahead and select all male, and the system's going to go ahead and filter just by male. I can go ahead and do multiple if I want to, and then the system will go ahead and apply those. I can either sort if I want to, by one or the other, or I can go ahead and cancel my filter. All right, so the add filter depends on the column you are looking at. Let's say, for example, birth date. If I click over here, notice that the settings are, different. It's a from to. So, you can go ahead and set, anybody from 01/01/20, all right, until present. We're going to go ahead and say 12/11. Obviously, we're talking about birthday, so we're not going to get that, many, but who knows? We're going to see right now. So anybody starting from 1/1/2020 to 12/11/20. All right. So actually, no, that's not right. That should be 2010. Let's do 2010. All right. Let's see if we get anybody. No, we didn't get anybody. And why is that? I should know. It's because the system allows 16 years, and older. So going back, we can go ahead and say 1970. Let's say. All right, until present. All right, so I have a total of 5,362 records, all with the birth date showing from, as we can see over here, from 1/1/1970 until present. I can change my sorting, from earliest to latest if I want to. All right, or I can just go ahead and remove my filter. All right. Same thing, let's say if we're looking at native language. If I click on that, it shows me all the available languages that are in the system, and I can go ahead and sort for people that, speak Spanish, as their native language. So obviously you're dependent that selection has been entered in order to do this kind of filtering. So here it's showing everybody who speaks Spanish. If I can go ahead and sort it by female, let's say, for example, and then if I can go ahead and say, sorted by first name, alphabetically, and there is, a really, complex filtering. And then, of course, I can print it. If I want to print it, I can go ahead and preview it before, and this gives me kind of like a report type of look. So it's rendering. Obviously, we're talking about, 2,544 records. Notice it's a little pleasing, easier to read, and this is the way it will print. It's always recommended to do a preview before you print. Obviously, we're not printing because this is 56 pages, but this is an option. All right, and just like it, export, just like it prints, it also exports. You can export it as an Excel document. You can export it as a PDF. Let's just go ahead and click over here. Notice that there's different options. If you are exporting for the purpose of, maneuvering under any other application, just plain export will be the recommended. If this is because you are bringing that data back to TE, then you want to go ahead and use this third-party data, option. But we're going to go ahead and select just export over here, and notice that the options are, Excel, comma separated, which is a CSV. It's for databases. Adobe PDF, if this is just a viewing document that you're passing along your meeting, and there is no editing capability. You have Word, you have PowerPoint, you have, PowerPoint. Yes. All right. So we can go ahead and cancel here. So that basically is your lister. So let's go ahead and address the buttons you see on the top. So if you have a new student, I'm going to go ahead and remove these filters. All right. So if you have a new student, you will click on the new button. Notice what happens when I click on the new button, and the system gives me a new page. So I can go ahead and enter all the corresponding information. In order to save a record, demographic record, you at least need the student ID and a name. And I believe it's just that, but let's go ahead and create it. Why not? So we're going to go ahead and say this is Oscar, and I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3. Oscar 1, 2, 3. Notice that the system takes numeric and alphabetic characters for that student ID. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and say this is Oscar Peña. All right. I'm not going to set anything up. I'm not going to enter any other information, just to see if the system will require me to enter this information before I save. So I'm going to click save. All right, so it says over here, some optional validation rules are not made. Save anyway. So technically, the system could let me save this without the gender, but it's saying that gender will be one suggested, highly suggested area for me to select. So I'm going to go ahead and set the gender. All right, so I'm going to try to save without entering any of the other information. Notice that I'm not entering a birthday there. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, and the system let me save it. Notice what happens now that I save. Now, and again, just like I said before, the system uses the same format where you have your main information here, and on the side, you have the side information. So now that I created that demographic record, what are the next steps for me to do? Enter in program years, which is basically the activity under each of those years. Student record, which is, basically the information under your entry form. Class enrollments, the classes a student is enrolled to. Class records, which is attendance. Program enrollments, the programs the student is enrolled to. Program records, any, program record, level data. Test, of course, demographic history is those, previous instances of demographics that have been entered throughout the year and so forth. All right, so one thing to disclose here. Notice that we're looking at the demographic lister over here. But right now, when we created a demographic record, the demographic record does not contain, even if we missed, the demographic record does not ask me for a record date. All right? So anything that shows under my demographic lister and really any other lister as well as report, it's because it has activity under the current year. What do I mean with activity? Anything that has a date, of the record, the particular record. Let's say attendance. Attendance, you have to enter a date in order to enter the attendance. Program enrollment, class enrollment, all those contain a date. As of right now, I have not included any date of record here under my demographic record. So if I were to filter or search for Oscar 1, 2, 3, guess what's going to happen? It's not going to appear. So you might ask yourself, well, Oscar, how am I going to enter activity to record Oscar 1, 2, 3 if I cannot even access? And that is a good point. So if you ever have a student that does not have any activity, just a demographic record, you have to remove the default filter. And that is by clicking on this filter button and then remove the option of current program year. So let's go ahead and do a quick practice here. I'm gonna go ahead and filter by Oscar just to prove over here. So ID we said is Oscar 1, 2, 3. All right, notice that there's nothing. But if I click on my filter button and remove the option for current program year, there is Oscar. All right, so once I enter activity for Oscar the student, let's just say in program years, which is an easy way to determine activity. Basically, this tells me that Oscar is active in the current year. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the new button here. Enter activity for the 2021. Really, that's all I need. And I'm going to go ahead and save. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and notice that this record, even though it does not ask me for a date, it's telling me that it's for a year. And that alone is sufficient. So I'm going to go ahead and close these tabs. And I'm going to go ahead and once again filter for Oscar the student. So I'm going to clear my filter. So it takes me back to my main window. And I'm going to go ahead and set the filter back again. Oscar 1, 2, 3. And there it is. I no longer have to go to filters and remove the option, even though it's removed already. Let me just go ahead and do it with a brand new with the default settings here, just to make sure that, here's my default setting of current program here. And let's go ahead and filter one more time. Oscar 1, 2, 3. There you go. All right. Without me needing to remove anything. So again, just keep in mind that when you create a demographic record, and this really goes for anything that you create it has to have activity. If you're creating a class definition and the class definition does not have any activity, any instance, any enrollments, don't expect to see that class because it's not active yet. The system will only show you records that are active. All right. So moving along, you have the button. Let me go back to that original lister over here. Notice that we have a new button over here that is enroll. Basically, this is to enroll a student under the current Pinova agency. All right. In addition to that, you have another way of filtering by selecting the particular site. So if I wanted to see only students from a particular site, I can go ahead and do so. All right. Then you have your filter button. Again, another way of filtering, and this one's a little more complex. So we're just going to go ahead and do a quick overview. You can go ahead and click on the plus sign and then set your and or your and or not. I want student Oscar 123, and enrolled in, program enrollment, ESL, and so forth. So it gets a little complicated, but if you need to, have that level of detail when sorting, or filtering, this is the way to do it. In addition, you have columns. Remember how we right-click and brought columns? So another way to do so is just by clicking on the columns. It gives me all the columns that are already selected, but I can go ahead and remove some. And then you'll see it over here. Gender is no longer there. Or I can go ahead and add others. I'm going to go ahead and add address. All right. And there is my address here. All right. So that is another one. Sort button, just like this right here. It serves similar purpose. Delete. Be careful with that button. The system would let you delete if you have a certain level of access. But even when you have that level of access, there is a certain hierarchy that needs to be understood before deleting. So what you see right here is what programmers will refer to a parent record. You might have remembered that we saw a button that referred to a child lister. So in databases, you have parent and child or children. Parents are basically the main record. Child or children records will be records that are dependent of a parent. So let's say, for example, under let's just go ahead and choose this right here. If I click on this record over here, let's see. Okay, maybe it's this right here. So for Abdel Kelly. So if I click on Abdel record, notice that the system gives me all the site records here under my Navigator. So let's go ahead and look if Abdel has some testing information. Sure enough, the student has 2 tests. So these tests become a child or children records. The demographic record, on the other hand, is the parent record. So in order for me to delete this demographic record, the parent record, I have to delete the child or children records. Obviously, anything that refers to, tests should never be deleted unless obviously this was, done by mistake. But even in that case, it's always good to have it as a historical, purpose, and you can just go ahead and add new tests. But just for the sake of explaining here, a child record will be anything that is saved under your demographic record. So if you need to delete a demographic record, you have to delete any class enrollments, any program enrollments, any hours that are set to the student. Now, obviously, if this will be a case where you have a student who happened to have entered the wrong ID and there is already an ID in the system, then that will be a different situation. You're talking about merging. So let's get to that. So let's say Abdel and the record right below Abelardo, let's go ahead and say that these technically are the same students. So you select both by pressing and holding the shift button, and then under your more button, once again, here's the more button coming in handy. You would click under more and you would click under merge. So when I click on merge, the system is going to compare the data between those 2 records. Notice that's what it's doing right now. And it's going to highlight the areas that are inconsistent. And it's going to ask me for me to solve them, meaning the IDs on both records are different. The system is going to make a recommendation, but obviously don't expect that recommendation to be correct always. But I always have the option of selecting record 1, record 2, or I can enter something myself that is completely different. All right, and then I will click solve on each one of those. So you'll basically solve each one of them. And then in addition to this, once over here, the system will display under entities to be solved, to be merged, the other areas that need to be, solved before this could be merged. Once all this is done, I will get a check mark instead of that 0 with the line, and then I can go ahead and click apply merge over here, and those 2 records will be merged. Does anything get deleted in this process? No. Basically, you're saying that the ID, you're just setting that up, to one ID. The records that were existing on both records are now placed under that one same ID. So any test that existed on record 1 and record 2, now it's under the same record. All right? I'm gonna go ahead and cancel this for now because we have to speed up the pace. All right? So we're gonna move along. We basically talk about your counting. Notice that you can move, from this, using this, buttons over here from one record to the other. Refresh, the system refresh automatically, but for the purpose of you cleaning up the data and confirming that the system is already refreshed, there's that refresh button that it lets you know about if, things are refreshed or not. Invite, those of you who, are doing RLI, reading level indicators, this is where you're going to go ahead and send that RLI. This is more of an advanced feature, so we're going to skip that for now. Export, we talk about that export. Print, you can print those records. And in addition to that, okay, so I have a good question from Anna saying, is it possible to merge 2 sites now? So let me just say, if you are merging the records from 2 different sites, there is a restructure that has happened, in TE. I stayed about right after Thanksgiving. So during the Thanksgiving, there was a, big release, and that was version 4.0. All records have been taken now to the agency level. So really, there is no need to merge up, those records because those records are at the agency level. And Janice, please feel free to, chime in if this is not correct. If basically a demographic record is created at each of those sites, but then it's still the same rule as before. Those records can only exist at the site level, and if you want to have another record under another site, it's just a matter of you creating that. Janice?
Oscar. Yeah, go ahead. My understanding, are you speaking of creating new records or merging 2 existing records?
I believe she's talking about 2 existing records under 2 different sites. Okay.
I was just on another call, and one of the agencies mentioned that within the database, now that it's been deaggregated, you might have had a student that was attending at one site or another site or both sites. After the deaggregation, the student record is up at the agency level, so there is no reason to have to merge them. If the question is about merging 2 physical sites, like let's say within the Rolling Hills database, you wanted to merge North and South, that would involve all the elements that are in those 2 sites, which isn't just students, that's the classes and all the attached information that goes along with the class, like the attendance. That would be very difficult to actually merge 2 sites. I'm not 100% sure how clean that would be. That would definitely be worth a conference call with perhaps tech support and one of the developers. But it's much easier now with the new DEAG to do a merge because it's the student information is all up at the top. And remember, the unique identifier for a student is that first column on the left, it's student ID. TopsPro Enterprise enforces that it is unique. And so if you tried right now to create a student ID that already exists, TE would give you an error message and not let you do it. Like Oscar's pointing to 4464722. You couldn't create another one with that. And that's because it's the unique identifier. And that's how it works.
Thank you, Janice. All right, so we were going on the More button. All right, so remember we talked about the schema. So basically, if I wanted to save the schema, it's just a matter of me setting the name over here and save it. The system will go ahead. If I happen to save a default, the system is gonna go ahead and open the next window under default, and those changes set under default will reflect. If I wanted to keep my default settings, and in addition to that, I can go ahead and say first name, last name. I can go ahead and do so, and in this way, I would have both options: the default setting plus the edited version. All right. So moving along, edit records. Just as the name says, it's just a way to open that record. Batch delete. That's another place where you should be careful. So remember how we talk about child and parent children records and parent records. If you are to delete multiple records, both with parent and child records, this will be your batch delete. So that is basically, it all depends what type of deletion we're talking. If this is just a batch delete of only parent records, the system might give you the access, obviously, if you have the right access group, but it will require a second person. Why does the system require a second person? Because this is a way from the programmers to assure that at least 2 users within the agency are in agreement of deleting this amount of records. Trust me, we have had calls under tech support that says, hey, what happened with these records? And then we look under, our programmers look at the, historical records, and some other user went ahead and decided to batch delete. And that's what happens. It needs a second person just to make the agency aware. It's a way of doing that handshake in agreement that, hey, at least 2 people are in agreement to delete this many records. All right. But again, this is just an access, capability. You have to be given the appropriate access to enable to in order to batch delete. Batch edit, same approach, editing the record in multiple ways. Let's go ahead and do a quick practice with batch edit. Let me show you what that is. So from the demographic record, one common task will be to enroll students under a class or a program. So let's just say I'm randomly clicking over here and selecting. I'm going to do a smaller count here. So I'm just going to do these 3 records here. All right. So I'm going to click on more, and I'm going to click on batch edit or batch. Actually, I'm sorry, that's batch insert. Batch insert. So we're going to do batch insert, and notice that the system gives me the capability of inserting them into a program year, which is basically what I did for Oscar 123, which is saying that Oscar is active in the current program year, enrolling the students in a program, which is saying Oscar and these other records are going to be enrolled in ESL or enrolling them into a class. So we're just going to go ahead and enroll these students into a program. So we're going to say here. Now, obviously, remember, this is a batch, approach. So my selections are going to cater to all selected records. In this case, it's 3 records. So I'm going to go ahead and say that these students are ESL. They all going to have the dates of, let's just, do this, today's update. Don't need to enter an end date because obviously I don't know when the students are going to end. But here's the system doing the batch insert. So it's inserting these records. Notice that obviously it tells me the one is already set as ESL, the other ones were not, so it goes ahead and confirms. So if I am to click over here now, and I click on program enrollments, there's my ESL. Obviously there was another enrollment here, but there's my ESL program enrollment. All right, so this is a batch way of doing things. All right, so moving along, because we have to pick up the pace just a little bit more here. You have the upload. We're going to skip that because that's more of an advance. Same thing with request data and child lister is just to see that child records for child or children records from that particular, parent record. All right. So we're going to move to the next down. So we're looking at records, and we only looked at, students, but in addition, obviously, we have classes, we have the programs, we have the tests. Let's go ahead and quickly visit tests because this is obviously, one of the reasons why you are collecting this data for the test purposes. Notice that the lister looks, the format of the lister is exactly the same. You have columns, you have rows, you have all your new buttons repeated over here. You have that more button for any other button that, needs to be used. You can always double click on that record to access the record. Here you have your site information under the Navigator. In this case, it's just, the edit view. For this particular test, notice that there's this pencil icon. The pencil icon is basically like a lock to this record, so that no one by mistake edits this information. If this information needs to be edited, it's just a matter of clicking this pencil, and whatever is accessible for editing, it goes ahead and becomes live, becomes with a box. So here you can go ahead and edit this information. We're gonna go ahead and close this for now. But, just like we did with other listers, with the other lister, you have the add filter button, you have your sort button, you can right click and add additional columns, and so forth. This particular column at the beginning, this is very new, site of test. So as Janice was talking, one of the changes that happened, on version 4.0 is the aggregation. The aggregation means that all the records that were from the site level have been moved to the agency level now. So, but if you are, looking to see where those students tested, because, your site breakdown is still set, there's agencies at different sites and they have your own testing sessions and so forth. So if you're looking to see where the student tested, you can always point to, refer to the site of a test column, and this will tell you whether the student got tested under site 3 or site 2 and so forth. And that is, of course, if you have multiple sites. All right, so we're going to be moving forward, and now we're going to move to reports. All right, so as I said before, TE has, about two main ways of showing the data. One is demographics, one is listers, and the other one is report. When it comes to reports, there's reports for different purposes. You have reports for cleaning up your data for those data managers. You have reports for teachers. Teachers would like to see that pre and post, data, the gains, how well they did within the test, whether they need to be, giving more reinforcement on certain instructional areas, within the curriculum of the class. That's another report. Then you have your data submission, your quarterly data submission. Then you have those reports. So multiple, reports. Let me just go ahead and show you some examples. So if we go to CASAS e-test, and one typical with CASAS e-test will be your WTU balance. People need to know how many, WTUs are, available under the agency, just so that you can keep a count of your, WTUs. I'm hoping that this information is under our database here. All right, good. So they did enter some WTUs. So this is nothing but, just a, spreadsheet that tells me all the purchases that were done of WTUs, how many were, purchased, how many were reserved, basically those pending tests, how many were used by the students themselves, and so forth. So basically we can see that under this, let me move my windows over here so I can look at the total. For the Rolling Hills, they have a total of 4,018 WTUs available. That's basically the sum of all the available WTUs from previous purchases. All right. That's one report. Let me go ahead and close this. We're going to go ahead and go back to reports in CASAS e-test. The other one is next assigned test. Next assigned test. So as the name suggests, this is your test that is to be assigned next. This is obviously for those students who have already taken their pre-test. So if you need to follow up and see what test the student needs to be given, whether you're doing it that under e-test, which e-test does it automatically in the background, or you are doing a paper test for the student, then you can go ahead and see what is the next test that the system is going to recommend based on the score from that previous test. Now for this, bear with me because I need to find a class that has this information. And by information, I mean test information. Go ahead and select these three over here, and let's generate. So notice that I click under my Navigator on class instances. The reason why I'm doing that is because otherwise the report would go ahead and give me the information at the agency level. And for these practice purposes, this will be too much information. Perhaps you need it on your end, that is fine. But for the purpose of running the report as fast as possible, I went ahead and narrowed down my selection by the class. So here you see that you have the student that is selected, the class, the test, date and form, and the level and the score. Based on that score, the system goes ahead and determine what is the next test to give. Obviously, this is, had to do with instructional program. If the student was tested in ESL, and as both those of you who are familiarized with the different testing series, ESL gets tested with life and work, and that is our testing series. Whereas ABE, ASC, HSD, they get tested with goals. Goals are, for it's our new testing series. All right. Right. So, notice that in some cases, depending on the score of the student, some tests are going to be higher, some tests are going to be lower. It all depends whether the student, reached that expected, bracket of scores, or the student his score was too low, so it needs to be taken to a different test. No matter what, the system goes ahead and does this adjustment, on their end. But if you need to be, informed of what the system is going to do, then, this is one report to do it. We're not going to dig into this too much because this is, it's more of an advance. But, this is one, handy report to look. And of course, you're always welcome to contact us at tech.support@casas.org, or send us an email, or call us. And we can definitely help you with any, individualized questions. One thing to point out, and you're going to see that across reports, because that's what we're looking right now at reports, is that as I hover on this report, there are certain fields that are highlighted red. I get that outline. This is called a drill in feature. This means that I can go ahead and click on Moreno, Hurtado, Susana, and the system will take me to that student itself. Notice that I go from report mode to lister mode. And this is when the system is using the capability of both, to get me the data I need. So all I need to do here is just double click on the record, and then it takes me to that, student information data where I can see the class, I can see the test, and so forth. All right, so that is drill in. I can go ahead and then close my windows here, and I will click on this orange bar to go back to my report. All right. So moving along, I'm going to go ahead and go back to reports. Another common report will be under test results. This one caters more for teachers. So, if your teachers need that test, data, in a form of a report, these are some of the common reports that they request. Let's do skills profile. So I'm going to do a skills profile. When you do skills profile, and it all depends on what type of installation you have. Let me just point out that there's two installations. You have the basics and you have the enhanced. One of the biggest difference between the basics and the enhanced is that the basic does not include class data information. So in other words, you cannot filter, you cannot sort, you cannot structure your data by classes. There is no such capability. Enhanced, on the other hand, just let you do that. So, it's recommended for you to have the enhanced version. Now, when it comes to the report, you can see this right here: individual skills profile and individual skills profile summary. So summary means the data sorted by the class, at a class level, whereas this one will be the individual student. So, even for those basics, accounts, you can still generate.
Fine. How are you doing? How's your family?
But it will be under the student level. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and select this right here. So let's go ahead and I'm thinking over here. Let's go ahead and do it by the class. Let's see if it lets us and I'm gonna go ahead and select class instances once again, and I'm gonna deselect my classes and select the same classes that I was selecting prior, hoping that it would give me that information. Remember, this is a fictitious database, so it all depends what data has been included under those classes, which will let me generate. All right, good. So notice that this right here is broken down by, it seems that it's broken down by the form itself. This form happens to include only one student. So here's my reading, and this is the score. It gives me those reading competencies. So community resources, health, government, law, and training. So it gives me the amount of questions that were correct. Obviously, this is just one student. Let's see if we find one that includes multiple students. No, same thing, one student. Okay, so this one includes 2 students. All right, so let's see. Oh, no, I take that back. This is 45 students. So basically, it includes, the following forms, and this is my, percentage, for the same areas, reading comprehension and math competencies. All right, and you also get the task. All right, and this particular one includes 2 students and so forth. We're gonna go ahead and look at another report that is very popular within teachers. So we're gonna go ahead and go back to reports, test result, and this one is your competency performance. We're gonna do it by the class, and let's see what that provides us. I'm gonna click on class instances once over, select the same 3 classes, and click generate. All right, very good. So this report happens to be a little easier to read. You have the position, which is basically your questions, the order of your questions, whether they were correct or not. This particular one, again, remember, we're doing the class selection here. So this includes only one student. Notice that when I hover down one student, it's drillable. Drill in, so I can go ahead and click on this and look at that one student that it applies to. All right, and there's the student. I can click on the orange bar to go back to the report. But for this student alone, basically it tells me the items that were correct, the competency number, the task, and the description of those competencies. So if I scroll down, the student did really good. But when it came to interpreting job-related science chart, diagrams, form, etc., this student perhaps need a little more enforcement because question 15 was wrong. All right, let's go ahead and scroll down and see if we find one with multiple students. Those are just one student, 2 students. All right, so this includes 2 students. So, as you can see, this is a good feedback for that teacher. And notice that this is sorted by the form itself. So this is a good feedback by for the teacher to see what areas need to be reinforced. Let's see, this is 2 students over here. Okay, look at this one. Oh, this is still one student. I'm sorry. So it all depends, but obviously in your real scenario, you'll definitely have more students included under your report because there's just so many, forms that the student will be able to take under that particular class. But in general, this is the idea for that teacher to get that feedback of what, instructional areas need to be, reinforced so that they can go ahead and, review those areas. Look at this. This includes 6, so if we look at the lowest here, I think it's 33, and 33 is interpreting mechanical concept and special relationships. So this is, one area that the teacher would have to, reinforce. All right. So moving to the next, going back to reports, test results. All right. So test history is another good one. So we're going to go ahead and click on test summary. All right, and let's see if we can include the same 3 classes, reading, math, and high school diploma in January. So this one, as the name suggests, is basically just a historical, summary of all the tests that the students have taken. All right, so notice that each student is displayed alphabetically, and you can always drill in if you need to. And it gives you the dates. This is particularly good for those, agencies that would like to see that pre-post test, information, to check if that student has a pre and a post, or just a pre, test. As you know, you have to do a pre and a post, in order to show a gain, and obviously depending on the activity of the students, some students are going to show 1 test. So we know that Maria over here, if she has enough hours, she should be, ready for a post test. Obviously notice that there is a column for instructional hours here. Obviously the information will be entered. We're talking with the, simulation database here, but this, if Maria would have, more than 40 hours of instruction, then Maria should be ready for that post test, if it needs to. All right. So, but yeah, this is a good, report. Notice that, some, students have more, tests than others. Notice that when it comes to this student over here, Xu Jin, this student happens to have a diamond. So just to give you a quick, information, a diamond basically is a test that is outside the accuracy range. Diamonds are basically when the test is too easy for the student. On the other hand, asterisk will be when the test is too difficult for the student. So in other words, the score of a diamond is higher than what it was expected for that form, and asterisk is lower than what it was expected for the same form. So, okay, so I have a question from Dr. Karen asking, how can I tell from this report where if they have a pre and post test, it is simply if you see the 2 tests? Yes, that is correct. Obviously, one thing to point out is that a pre and a post test means a pre-test is the very first test given to the student. So if we're talking about Xu Yin, the pre-test obviously will be that 081 RX. The post test will not be the next one. The post test will be the last one, or actually not the last one, I'm sorry, the highest score. All right, so within this right here, notice that the highest score happens to be, let's see, 232. Yes. All right. So basically, in this case, it happens to be the last test, but keep in mind that it's not necessarily the last test. It's actually the highest score test. So what you're looking here is for the very first test given, that is their official pre-test, and their highest score test, that is their official post-test. So that's how you will determine pre and post, a test. Good question. All right. So let's go ahead and close this. And so far, we basically cover reports that are good for the proctor and good for the teacher. Now we're going to go ahead and cover reports that are good for that data person, your data manager. One good report to use will be your NRS data integrity. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Short for you can, people will refer this to the DIR, and that is your data integrity report. So we're going to go ahead and run this by the agency. Notice that I'm not running this by the class, because in this scenario, your data manager is not going to be a teacher who focused to an individual class that he or she is teaching. This is your data manager who focused for the entire agency. So I'm going to go ahead and run everything by the agency. I'm not going to go to, class instances and select the class itself. I'm just going to run the entire agency. We like to refer to this report as your inventory report. Why? Because the numbers that appear under this report doesn't necessarily mean they're good or bad. What do I mean with that? Well, let's say, for example, you're starting the year. So you're just starting the year, the program year. It is expected for, if you are to run the data integrity at the beginning of the year, for you to have under category 2, less than 12 hours of instruction, to have most of your students being dropped. That's because the students haven't had enough hours, but gathered yet. Again, you're starting the year. As you go along, through the middle of the year, then that number should be expected to be much, much lower. But if it's not, this is where the data manager comes into play. So notice again that the report uses the drillable in the drill in features, by highlighting. So I can click on this, and it gives me that total of students, 1,881. So basically saying that these students have less than 12 hours of instruction. So I need to go, to each of those students and either enter records or confirm with my, registration database, if an import was made or so forth. So that's basically your data manager, doing the work right there. Notice that you can also have, if you right click on these fields, you have additional, options. One popular one will be drilled down to Nrs Monitor. So if you click on this gives me additional information. This might be just more of an advanced, so we're just gonna, slightly cover this. But since we're here and we're talking about your data manager roles, this will be one, common, report. So here basically tells me the pretest and posttest. So one of the previous questions was, mentioned, how can I determine whether this is the pretest and posttest? Well, this is one. This is just one. This is another way to do so. So it tells me the hours that have been collected by the student. Notice that none of them are, over 12. And the mark of 12, just to add to that, and that's more of an accountability area, will be that is the minimum required in order for the system to, credit the student with a pretest, credit the student with a class enrollment, with a program enrollment, and so forth, with a gain, and so forth. So if the student gets a pre and post test and does not have hours, then the system will not credit that student with the gain, because of that hour requirement. Instructional hours requirement. It also tells me, this report tells me the starting date, the end date. If the student has been absent, it tells me those days of absence based on, the activity that has been entered in one activity. Again, I mean, entry forms, update forms, hours. That's very big, for the system to determine activity and so forth. So this is, one very detailed report. All right, so looking down, you notice that, it gets very, very detailed. It tells me those students with a valid pretest. So those means that those students have already a pretest done, so I don't have to worry of those. They just have to be, being ready for a post-test, and that is the next category. So 09 will be valid pretest with no post-test. So this will be a good, place to look for the data manager to see if these students, haven't been tested, and why have they, not been tested? Do they have enough hours to test? Have they, left the program? Are they constantly absent? Has the teacher, forgot to test them? Multiple reasons. But this will be one good way to base this on. Moving along over here, those students with primary, goals, secondary goals. So those are, your entry update information. Those students that already have, a pre and post, but they don't have the necessarily hours. All that is displayed over here. Again, this will be for that data manager, usage. All right. So now that leaves us with, part of the data manager, I should say, role will be to submit reports for, data submission. So obviously, data integrity could be one. Then those California agencies would have payment points and so forth. Other agencies would have your NRS tables and so forth. So these are reports that you guys can go ahead and use. When, and again, we're just gonna touch the surface of this just for the purpose of covering those roles. Notice again, I am not selecting a class. I'm clicking generate because I want the entire agency to be selected. So NRS tables, long report. Notice that there's many reports that are being run that are included, and this covers every possible areas, of your data. So you have participants by entering educational functioning levels, and so forth. You have your NRS table 4, which is, measurable skill gains, and so forth. Then, some of them, if they don't apply, obviously, don't display, outcome achievements for participants in integrated educational and training programs. So here's, the data. All right, so the next report I wanted to show you, and I know we're just getting close to ending, will be, so as we said, and just to cover, we talk about reports for the proctors, we talk about reports for the teachers, we talk about reports for the data manager, which includes cleaning your data as well as submitting your data. Now, and we also said that TE has 2 ways of showing your data. You have the listers and you have reports. But there are some reports, and really there's more reports that TE combines the 2, to create a report. And one good example will be your demographic, detail report. So I believe it's the detail, or will it be the summary? Let's go ahead and check the summary. We're gonna go ahead and click over here, and let's see. Yeah, there it is. All right. So this is one report that gives you plenty of visuals. All right. So here you have, this is all demographic data. So I have the choice of using a pie chart, any of these graphics, a bar chart, to display my data. Let's go ahead and select a pie chart for now, and let's click generate. So let's see what the system does. And we might have to narrow it down to a class if it's too long, too big for the, okay, no, very good. The system was able to generate it. All right, so here, it gives me the breakdowns for the different demographic areas, students with Social Security, students who have consent, their data, by age. So this is good one over here. We can see that, the biggest, area over here, pretends to older, so I'd say, actually it should be this one over here. So this is the count. Yes, all right, so it's 18 to 21. So if we click over here, obviously it's reviewable, just like we did with the others report. It combines the report with the lister. But here is the trick. And by the way, you have other areas that the system breaks it down into columns, and you can switch from, into a pie chart, and the system will, include columns if you rather see it in columns. But here's the cool thing. If I am to go back over here, remember how we were sorting and, filtering before with a lister. So if I am to go to in-program years, which is basically my students active in the current program year, we're going to go ahead and combine the features of lister with filtering, and then end up with a report with the visual aids, of a pie chart in a columns. All right, so let's go ahead and we're, filtering. We're looking to see students that are female, that have a, ethnicity of Hispanic Latino, and that have a birth date range of, let's see, 01/01/1970 to 01/01/1985. All right, so we're gonna click OK. My count is to 1,272. Then we're gonna go ahead and add another column, and we're gonna bring, let's see, we're gonna go ahead and bring instructional program. All right, so under instructional program, I'm only selecting ESL students. So my count now goes down to 763. So now that I, did this elaborated filter, and I can keep going, there's no limitation here. I can go ahead and click generate. So now the system is combining the features of a lister and being able to filter, just like your spreadsheet, sorting and, you know, adding columns and so forth. And then I can go ahead and produce a report based on that lister with, you know, visual aids, you know, which are my, you know, pie chart. I can even go to layout settings, and I can switch my, you know, visual aids from, you know, pie charts to bars, you know, and I can go ahead and apply. And then the system will re-render and give you the same information using bars. All right. And notice some of the fields are still, you know, able to drill in. So I can go ahead and see, you know, all students. Obviously, we selected ESL students, you know, but these students happen to be also in other programs. So it's giving me the breakdown too for that. All right, so and I can always click over here, and it takes me to that, you know, count of 763 if I need to go to any of those individual students. All right, so that basically concludes, you know, the training. Actually, no, that does not conclude the training. Sorry for the spoiler over here. That was report. I'm still, you know, tools and help. So give me just a quick 5 minutes and we'll be done. All right. So that was report. Tools. As you can see, basically, you know, these are the tools that TE uses. So common, you know, tools will be scanning. So some agencies would use a scanner to input the data. What is a scanner? If you do paper testing, you have the option of manually enter that form, you know, let's say, you know, that test, you know, or you can go ahead and use a scanner. And that's just not a test. You can also import or scan, you know, your entry, your updates, you know, and so forth. You know, but all can be done through scanner, which is much faster because those of you who are familiar with a paper test or a paper form, I should say, they're dual-sided, and the scanner has two reading up, you know, heads that will read the top and the bottom all at one same time as the sheet goes through the scanner. These are not your average scanner. These are not your Xerox, you know, scanners. These are specific scanners, you know, Scantron scanners. And again, if you are looking for more of that information, please feel free to send us an email to techsupport@casas.org, and we'll give you exactly those scanners, you know, that are compatible. CASAS does not sell scanners. We can refer you to Scantron, who sells the scanners. All right, but scanning is one option. Third-party import system is just like we were talking before. This is a way of you importing your data. So basically, as I said, you would have to be validated as an agency in order to import this data. You can import your personal, which is your teachers. You can import, you know, the class data, your demographics, your tests, your hours, your program enrollment, class enrollment. But each one of those need to be approved by our programmers. So you have to go through this, you know, approval, you know, format, which, you know, we can definitely provide you this information if you are to contact us at CASAS, techsupport@casas.org. Then within the basics area, you know, proxies, you know, if you want a proxy records from a previous, you know, program year, the system does let you proxies pretest from January 1st until, you know, June 30th, and those become your pretest for the next year. Again, this might be, you know, of an advanced feature, but if you need more information, this is one way to do so. Not exactly the option for every agency, because obviously you end up with a higher score test as your pretest. So the student has to, you know, surpass that score in order to have a gain. So it's not necessarily the best option for every agency. TE to TE import wizard. If you need to import or export data from another TE, you know, another agency, perhaps, you know, another agency has, you know, the student that you're currently testing right now, and you have requested that agency to share that testing data, you are welcome to do that request, and you will basically have that agency export the testing data and send it to you. those of you who are familiar with the surveys, your NRS Core Performance Wizard, that would be, the way you select your safe population data. And quarterly data submission, those agencies that submit the data quarterly, this is a new feature that, the programmers have included, where you do the submission no longer through an email, but through this wizard, so all these, will be part of, the rest are advanced, so we're not going to even go ahead and cover it. You do have a help section, but I will say that the best place to get your help documentation will be the CASAS website. We have a content release notes, I should say, release notes, and this basically says all the updates that has happened with the latest, releases. So every time the programmers will go ahead and release a new build, they go ahead and note the changes or update or fixes that happen within this latest release. So this is basically your release notes. All right, so I said that under help, in addition to the help information that you have over here, the best place is to go to the CASAS website. So let me take you to the CASAS website here. So So from the CASAS website, and I will put that link on the chat next, you would go to Training and Support on the top menu, and on the side menu you have the two help documentation sections for TE and E-Test. So E-Test is the first one. So E-Test help documentation, online help, and TOPSpro Enterprise help. So let's go ahead and click on TOPSpro Enterprise help, and one common section will be class, student, and teacher information. So let's say you want to know how to create classes. So here's a helpful document on how to create classes. All right. So it walks you step by step with screenshots. Remember, we talk about classes and definitions, and then after the classes and definitions, you have to enter the class instance to enter the details of the class and so forth. So this is, there's tons of documents here available, for this. Let me go ahead and take one step back over here, and what I'm going to do is, let's see, we said tech support, training and support, and I'm going to include this link in the chat. One second. Help documentation. Okay. All right, so there's your page over here that you can have. Keep in mind that this is just a central place. From here on the side menu, you would, select whether you want E-Test, help documentation, or TOPSpro Enterprise. And again, for those agencies who are looking to get approval for importing your data from a third party, this was under TE, and you will click under Data Exchange. Data Exchange, and the particular documents that you want to look at is this right here, TOPSpro Enterprise Data Exchange Specification and TE Data Import Templates. All right, so, but again, you can contact us at tech support, and we can give you more details and walk you through this process. All right, so this concludes the training, TE Basics. And as I said before, if you need further assistance, here's our contact page for tech support. Our email, is techsupport@casas.org, and our number is 1-800-255-1036, option 2. We are open from 6 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon Pacific time. All right. Thank you very much. Any questions to address? Janice, anything else that needs to be covered?
Oscar, you've done a great job of covering a lot of turf in 2 hours. I think it was excellent. The recording will be helpful. So that's a good tool to share as well.
Very, very good. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, all this has been recorded, and we will follow up with a link of the recording. Give us some time to get that I think Zoom renders that, and usually takes its time to render the recording, but as soon as it's available, I think we're going to be having it available under the CASAS website. So just as a reference, you can always go to the tech support page, and under TOPSpro Enterprise, you will see the link of the previous training that we had. So I believe that this link is going to be, updated with the training for today. All right. But either way,
Great.
obviously, we're going to send that link. All right. If we don't have any other questions, you're welcome. My pleasure. Let us know if there's anything else we can assist you. Again, we're available through tech support. And thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful day.
Also, if you have any suggestions for future training classes, if you want to learn more about a certain feature or a certain type of reports or tailor-made for different groups in your agency, maybe your teachers want to learn about reports that teachers can use, that kind of thing, please put that in the chat box and we'll take it to heart. We're starting to plan our Summer Institute 2021, and we're looking at the format and the layout because it's going to be virtual this year. So thank you for your input on that.
Very good information. Yes, thank you. All right, I'll see you guys. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Friday. Bye.